blessing, love, blessing, 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 love.
Let's get it.
Timeless is a movie that we made on little to no budget. Actually, there was no budget. And what we did was we galvanized support in the community for crew and cast. And it was a group of us that got together and said, well, we're going to do this and we're going to put our all into it. And that's what we did. And so many of our shoots were done by hook or crook. And sometimes we just didn't have. It was not glamorous. It was not like any movie set where you go and there's food and there's dressing rooms. We sort of had to do what we could. And that's what makes this so amazing. Not every day do you see a love story that contains your culture and your lifestyle, and your political intrigue, and sort of all of these things are wrapped up into Timeless. We have some really talented people in the Virgin Islands. In fact, people like to say per capita this and that. Well, per capita, we probably have one of the biggest pools of talent that you can find. We have cinematographers that are laying in wait because on the outside or people aren't looking for them. We have people who are musicians that make fantastic music every year. We have great artists for decorating sets, and we have great talent from actors and people who want to perform. And what we did with Timeless is we took advantage of that. We found a way to put people to work, and we had them doing the things that they dreamed of doing and they wanted to do. And that sort of overcame the necessity to have a great amount of money, because that was not what was on people's minds when we were making the film. We were just concerned with making it good. Sometimes we would have issues with getting locations. Sometimes we had issues with getting wardrobe, being able to eat for the day. But we kept going. And we just kept putting one foot in front of the other until it got done. It was really tough because it took years to make, and many of us put aside working at regular jobs in order to make this happen. So in that period of time, we really didn't make money. And that's just a plain talk. We sacrificed what our lifestyles would be like for this movie. And so, yes, this was a dream that I had. So it was a little easier for me. But to me, I really am grateful for the people who this was not their dream. This was not something they thought about, but they came. And they gave me the shirts off their backs. And they gave me locations, and they gave us food, and the crew, my crew, some of those folks, they got on board, and they just did whatever I asked. This was not their concept for 10 years. This was something that I had introduced to them, and they took it on as their own.
Live. With the man, Edward. How you doing? What you saying?
I'm awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I've been excited about having this interview with you for a long time.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Like I say, I glad we can make it. I glad we here. You know what I'm saying? Saw the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw the movie finally, man. You know what I mean? And if you don't know what
Yes.
we talking about, I'm here joined. Well, first of all, introduction, we here. This is Blessed Love Full Casting. You know, this is the Lewy Reason podcast. And we joined here by the man Edward La Borde.
Yes.
Yes, La Borde Jr., you know, the director, the writer, producer of Timeless, a VI love story. You know what I'm saying? Available now on Amazon and Tubi. I gotta check it out. Ed, what we saying? What good?
Oh man, everything's awesome. It's a good place to be. Timeless has been a major labor of love for myself and so many others. We waited patiently. We fought through. We had some ups and downs. We had lift ups and let downs. And but we here, and it's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, before we get into, after the movie details and stuff like that, I'd like to introduce the people to who is Ed, you know what I mean? Who is Edward? You know what I mean? Were you born and raised in the Virgin Islands? Like, let us know. Who is Ed?
That's a big question. Yes, I am a Virgin Islander through and through. I grew up everywhere. I grew up in New York, mostly, but always been back and forth to home.
Okay.
My parents, my father's from St. Thomas, my mother's from St. Croix.
Okay.
And they both VI roots run very deep. I could trace my family roots very far back. And ever since I could remember, my heart's desire was to share the Virgin Islands with the world, especially since I moved to the States, and it just always was with me. Like the people I met and the friends I made, I always wanted them to know and see where I was from, because I always felt like it was the most beautiful place. The most beautiful place in the world.
Okay.
And not just because the beaches were nice, but because I really believed in our culture.
Right.
I loved our music. I loved our food. I loved how we spoke. I loved the way we treated each other. And I always wanted to make sure that the world saw that.
So you went to school, like you went to school in the Virgin, or you was going to school in New York?
I went to school. I started out in the Virgin Islands until about fourth grade.
Okay.
I moved to New York. And we moved around a little bit. My parents were divorced, and it was there was a lot going on there, and story to be told in another movie. But
right.
but we moved around a lot. But we landed in New York for a major part of my life. We lived in Brooklyn. I lived in the Bronx as well. Moved to Brooklyn, ended up going to Midwood High School at Brooklyn College, where I became close friends with some people who ended up being very powerful and influential in the world. Really interesting. I became a part of a close-knit group of friends that they grew up to be very awesome, and I'm really proud of them as well. Yes, all of them have done well for themselves. I don't want to single out people, because then I'll leave somebody out. But my brothers are awesome. And then I joined the Navy. I started moving around even more, ran around the world. Went to the Far East, and then the Gulf War broke out. I went to the Middle East. I got out of the Navy eventually, and moved to California. I started my movie career in California. I didn't want to go back to New York, or I didn't want to come back home. I wanted to pursue movies, and it was this dream that I had to like I said, I wanted to share the Virgin Islands with the world. But the thing was, I never saw anybody that was like me in movies or even behind the scenes.
Okay.
And
Yeah, yeah.
and then early on, like when I was in high school, Spike Lee came out with She's Gotta Have It. And all of a sudden, this was like a new world. It was like, oh wow, wait a minute. He was like, he was like my height. He looked a little bit like me, and you know what I mean. I said, okay, this is something. And
Uh-huh.
then you know, I had all this passion for arts and writing, and 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 I just had this real passion that I was going to make movies. I moved to the Bay Area. I started pursuing it without going to school at first. And then I just started hitting a lot of walls. No, you know, people didn't really care to take me on. And eventually I went to film school.
Okay.
After 2 years in film school, I started to see how expensive it was going to be to get out of there. So I said, okay, I'm going to take my money and make a movie with it. And
Uh-huh.
so I made a movie called Me and Mrs. Jones in the Bay Area, and that starred Brian White, Kim Fields, Victor Williams, who happened to be one of my close friends in from high school, and he was a regular on the King of Queens at the time, and
Mm.
um, and me and Mrs. Jones, and then I made friends with Dwayne Wiggins of Tony. We were cohorts. We would meet regularly just to talk about movies and talk about had this dream that we would be working on movies together.
Okay.
And once I got Me and Mrs. Jones done, I mean shot. I went to Dwayne and Dwayne got on board and he put the music on and we had a lot going on. We had Keisha Cole on the soundtrack. She kind of came up with us in the studio. Dwayne is a person who believes in young talent, and he raised a lot of people up to bring them to the forefront. And so he was hoping to make that happen with me, and we had our successes with Me and Mrs. Jones, but it was really tough. It took its toll on me, and then I moved back home. I had these visions before I moved back home of this slave girl running from a sugar mill.
Mm-hmm.
And mind you, I hadn't been home in years, but I saw it. I used to see it in my head clear as day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, and it was just haunting me. And then I started seeing these other pieces of the movie, and eventually I had things were really rocky for me between Me and Mrs. Jones really taking off, and and I went back home to visit, and I just said it's time for me to just be home, just be home. And I went to spend time with my father, and it ended up being that it was his last 2 years of life, but our relationship needed that time.
Right,
And
right.
in that time I just lived. I was home like anybody else. I had jobs, I did things, I worked with people, I got involved with the community, and eventually I built up enough to get the resources to for what I saw. I saw that our community was wanting to have the movie business, and we've had years of movies. I mean, so it doesn't. Well, I don't want to make it sound like movies weren't made in the Virgin Islands, because that's just not true. But movies were made by visitors, so we had visiting productions coming. Um, but when I got home, we there was a lull in that. There was no, home could they had its challenges for attracting the filmmakers to come to the Virgin Islands. There were popular things like Pirates of the Caribbean that we thought would be good fits, but they chose other islands.
Uh-huh.
And so we were sort of like pulling at straws for getting movies made. You know,
Okay. Yeah.
a lot of times they would come and they would bring all of their own professionals, even though we had people there that had lots of talent and had a lot to offer for production.
Uh-huh.
Um, So I mean, to make a put long story short, eventually, I hooked up with David Edgecombe, who was at the Reichel Center at the time. He was part of the University of Virgin Islands, and him and I became fast friends. We were cohorts in planning. He shared the same dream with me, and we started this company, Cutting Edge Entertainment.
Right.
And so I was working for Senator Donna Storg at the time.
Mhm.
I'm laughing because of what happened was crazy. What happened was I started working for him when he became the Senate president. And
Come on.
then shortly after he got in, I went to get married, and I fell in love with my wife, Tina, who was a major part of this. And when I came back home from my wedding, I lost my job because things didn't go too good in the legislature for him at the time. Like
Mhm.
if people remember, people from the Virgin Islands that will remember the history of what happened. I won't go through all those details, but suddenly I was now jobless,
Uh-huh.
and I said, okay. Well, I went to my wife, and she's like, "Look, this you got your little camera equipment and stuff. You could really go for this. Start your company."
And your wife is a Virgin Islander too?
No, my wife
Oh,
is from North Carolina.
okay, okay.
We 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 met through a mutual friend, Monique Walters, who I was working with at the time, and she's like, she was working temporarily with me, and I guess she saw the match, and one day when it was not convenient for me, she said, "I got somebody to introduce to you." I was like, "I don't want to meet anybody,"
Uh-huh.
and she said, "That's too bad because she's coming over right now."
Okay.
And bam, it was an instant situation for me. And then but it was important for me to meet somebody like her because she fell in love with the Virgin Islands before she met me.
Okay,
and
okay.
and being somebody who traveled a lot, I've been in the States and I come home and stuff, kind of needed to meet somebody who loved my culture and understood it, but also was not so ingrained that they couldn't do other things.
Yeah, got you,
You know
got
what I
you.
mean? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't want to. I don't want to like. But it was just my preference. It was just a good thing. I don't even know if I really had a preference. It just came to me, and I just believe that God knows what He's doing.
got you. Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
he gave me somebody. I mean, people who know her think that she's more Virgin Islander than me.
Yeah, that's the way to work.
That's how heavy that is. It's embarrassing actually, but but um but she was always there to support and let me know, yeah, this is okay. We met, and she knew my dream to make Timeless, and she
Uh-huh.
said, "No, now it's time for you to start doing some stuff." So that's when I started doing independent stuff. I was working with Ray Marone a lot, and then I started to build up crew, and
Mhm.
and I was very open. I had already made movies and stuff. I had already done some stuff stateside, and I was just bringing my skills and talents to see who was willing to work with me. So my door was open to any and everybody.
Uh-huh.
You didn't
Uh-huh.
even have to. You didn't even have to have any experience. I would just find what your skill set is. Find, because in movies, it requires all kinds of things. You know what I mean? It
Mhm.
requires all kinds of things, and so anybody can place themselves in a movie set and find something to do. I was just a firm believer in that, and I and so it was not an easy road because the Virgin Islands was really crying for movie production and wanted that change. But the thing I learned about change in the world is that the people who drastically need the change, a lot of times they don't really know what that looks like or feels like And that's the reason why they need to change, why it's a need.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to be a part of the change, if you want to make the change, you have to go into it with grace. You have to go into it with the grace that the people that you're trying to help with the change, they don't see you
Mm-hmm.
because they don't know what change looks like. So every time a door closed on me, every time we got turned down, there was, sometimes I would initially feel it, but then I would go home to my wife, we would talk about it, and she would, we would come up with, look, you gotta be graceful. These, if it's not here, if there's no movie industry here, then people don't understand what it takes.
Right.
And you just have to do what you have to do to make it happen. And so then after a while, we got to build up our production values, and the technology came about where video would look like film, to match sort of like what my movie was like before, which was a 35 millimeter professionally done film. And it was cost effective suddenly to make a movie on Canon 5D.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
so then it was like David and I got together and we gotta get this camera. We gotta get this camera. We gotta start rolling. So we
Yeah.
get the camera, and our commercials started to look really awesome. And it was like, they look like they could be movies.
Okay.
Then we're like, yeah. And then there was one, I went home after making one commercial, and I showed my wife, and she saw this commercial and she said, it's time. You need to make Timeless.
Okay.
And then that's when it was on. Then we were recruiting people, got people going, we got the crew size increased. Actually, some of it swapped out because some people, they couldn't put up with me too long because I couldn't pay well. And they used to be like, yeah, Ed, I love you, but you ain't paying no money. I going to go get this job.
Yeah.
Some of that was going on, you know what I mean? And that was all good. But we had a whole new crew that started to, like, they all believed in, we want to make this movie. Hella high water, we gonna make this movie. So they got on board. I got with
So you kind of got the crew first before the cast?
Yes, the crew first.
Okay.
The crew first. And then the crew, I hooked up with at the time Digitac Films. And Digitac is now the White Winston Media, but also involved with Digitac was AK, who's AK the artist, the DJ. And I'm gonna tell you something about them. They were awesome. They were brilliant people. AK was like this brilliant mind. Like anything you give AK, he's gonna learn it, he's gonna master it, he's awesome. And then you had Dwight, who was a superstar camera master of light.
So, yeah,
And like he just had this natural ability to to everything he shot look awesome.
Okay.
And I saw some videos that they did, and I was like, this stuff look better than mine.
Yeah.
But I said, I better call them and put them on the team. Instead of looking at them as competition, because I looked at them as people that we need to be together.
Great. Yeah. That's a good
And
writing.
I got together with them and I said, hey guys, I want to make this movie. And they were like, hey, that's awesome, because we wanted to make a movie too. And I was like, shoot, I dodged that bullet. They would have made that. They would have made the movie. But they were like, we ain't got no script. We ain't got all of that other stuff you got. But yeah, we'll do this with you. So we got together and we joined, and then we had Royce Cricky, who became like my ace. Royce he used to direct for WTJX. and he had a lot of production experience. Royce is a strong-minded person. Like, you can't shake him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the two of us are very different, but we were like a left hand and a right hand. And and he became really a really powerful force because he not only had skills, he was like a MacGyver like person. Like, if something breaks, Royce he'll figure out how to fix it, and he will fix it. If it ain't working for us, he will make it work for us. And anytime I was falling and being weak, Royce's hand will just reach down and grab my arm and like, let's go. We gotta finish this. Let's go.
Yeah.
And Royce is awesome. And then we had James Gardner, and James had a lot of experience with media. But James, the thing about James, his talent was do anything. James's talent was his giving of his time. Yes, he had little skills here and there, but he had such a willingness to show up and be a part of the war. You know what I mean? That like, I love him to death as well. And then we had Tawasi. Tawasi Carr came. I was on Face to Face with Adi Otley, and his mother saw the show, and his mother called me up and says, "Hey, my son wants to do this, and you think he could? You could think he could?" I said, "Sure, send him." Tawasi came, little short rasta, humble as could be.
Yes.
Humble like nobody's business humble. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
like I don't think I've met anybody as humble as Tawasi. He was always there. And what Tawasi brought was Tawasi showed up and stuck with me so close that there were days that I would have shot by myself, but Tawasi was there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tawasi would do anything. He shared that kinship with James.
Right.
And even James and he became close cohorts because they had that same like mind. Right. They were quiet, but they're gonna show up and they're gonna stick with you hella high water. And then we had Junebug. Junebug was the life of the party. Okay. Junebug came and Junebug brought energy. Junebug kept us laughing and he kept us alive. But Junebug, skill-wise, Junebug is like a savant for production. Anything in production he'll do. Even the top work, Junebug can do. But he's the kind of person who brings so much life that even on set, the people who came on as extras and actors, he had them going. Everybody came to wanting to see Junebug on set because they know they're gonna have a good time.
Yeah.
We had a nice little crew, and everybody brought different attitudes and skills and all that. And we started to look for actors, and every actor came on a different way. But what we did was we were in the little theater and we would have auditions, and we almost handpicked the auditions. I didn't want to go through like a full call because then I'd be forever Virgin Islands so full of talent. You'd be seeing so much people. Right. It's ridiculous. But also Virgin Islanders are shy. So you'll put the casting call out and they won't come.
Right.
But they're gonna see you in the street and say, "Hey, I hear you was doing this thing." And so I say, okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna meet them where they're at. Those who I know want to do it, I'm gonna look for them, try them out, put them together and see how they work. And the whole crew was involved with the casting because what I wanted to do was it was really important for the movie to be very VI in terms of the accents, in terms of the stuff that happens. So although I wrote it and I had these expectations, I didn't want to be blind to stuff that was unrealistic.
Right.
And so the crew would be in the room when we had the auditions or we had the actors trying different things. The whole crew was there all the time, not just me and another person. It would be everybody, and everybody had a little say in it. Oh, I don't like them. Oh, they were good. Oh, they were funny. Oh, they didn't sound VI. They not, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so we were able, I feel like that helped me get the strongest people we could get for the moment,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah.
And we had a lot of fun. I think the process was so enjoyable. It made us forget that didn't have any money. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Well, I forgot. I can't speak for everybody, but
Yeah.
I know people had smiles on their faces every time they showed up because we were having a good time.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and then once we had a lot of ups and downs with finding the cast, and then finally when we got the cast, it was like a family one time. Because remember now, the crew was there the whole time. So
Right.
as if you were a cast member, you saw the crew when you came in. You met who they were. They talked with you. You know what I mean? They interacted. So everybody was family right away, and everybody was a different type of person. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? That there were no people. They and we had such an eclectic group. It was all love all the time. It was never nobody looked at each other funny. People didn't look and say, "Oh, who is this?" Or and we would treat everybody that came into our world, because we're now a family. Everybody that came into our world was welcome.
Okay. Well, here, what
Mhm.
we're going to do, we get a quick word from our sponsors, and then we come right back with
Okay.
with the rest of the story. You know what
Yes.
I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
shit. Bigging up our sponsors, Beast Printing, for all your printing needs. T-shirts, cups, tablecloth. Yeah, tablecloth. Chemo, private backhoe service. Excavation, need some yard cleaning? Call Chemo, private backhoe service. Outdoor Island Cinema, for your virtual outdoor entertainment. They also have bounce houses, K Services, and Blessed Love Music.
No one knows when the hour of Africa's redemption cometh. It is coming for sure. It is coming in the whirlwind. One day, like a storm, it will be here.
Yes, yes, yes. We are back. We are back.
Yes.
Yeah, man, with the man Edward La Borde. Yeah, as we were saying, I was going into the stuff. I wanted to touch on, like, when would you say the recording or the wanting to be a director or the videographer like actually hit you? Like, at what point, when you were still young, when you was, you know what I mean? When you actually get
Okay.
that vision?
Okay. So growing up, I loved movies. I loved them. I mean, I used to, when I go into the movie theater, used to be so like that felt like a dream to me every time I go to the movies.
Uh-huh.
The smell of the popcorn, the watching, and you watching this movie and all of that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And So I always loved going to the movies. I loved watching movies at the theater. Like it was very important part.
Right.
And then in the Navy, I spent a lot of my time spending my money, having fun, and didn't have nothing to show for my time in the Navy. It's really a bad thing. But then anyway, after a while, it was time for me to get out, and I had nothing to really show for my time. So I went and got a video camera to try to capture some of the stuff that I saw.
Oh, okay.
And then I started well, the first video I made, it was so boring that I was like, this is not gonna work. I gotta I gotta make these a little better. So I started telling my shipmates to like do stuff, like make little skits.
Uh-huh.
And then I started editing the skits from VHS to VHS decks.
Okay.
I
Okay.
built this little editing system in my room.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know anything about production. I just was doing it,
Right.
you know?
Okay. Okay.
And I got so into it. And then my shipmates, they started calling me Matty Lee, which is a combination between Matty Rich, who made the Inkwell and this movie called Straight Outta Brooklyn,
Uh-huh.
and then Spike Lee, who we all know is
Uh-huh.
Spike Lee. and and so it was time for me to get out. And I was like, should I get out or stay in? Get out or stay in? And I was like, if I get out, I gotta go hard and pursue this movie thing. And that's what I did.
Okay. Okay. So it kind of started from like a hobby-ish natural thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But that I was going for I always, and I once read in a book from Spike Lee that if you want to do this, you got to be what you want to be from the beginning. So I didn't want to be an assistant to anybody. I didn't want to be nobody's intern. I wanted to produce, I wanted to write, and I wanted to direct. And I absolutely knew that. So when I got out, I started talking about movies to everybody I knew, everybody I met.
Uh-huh.
And because remember, I'm now in the Bay Area and I know no one. So I'm just meeting people for the first time. It's like starting your whole life over.
Right.
What I wanted to do was I wanted to create a situation for myself where it was like sink or swim.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like I did not want to be comfortable. I wanted to be out in the world. Like if you don't make it, but you're going, it's like get rich or die trying, that whole idea.
Yeah.
It's like, this was it. It was like, you're going to be out here, you're going to be making, you got to make this. There's no mommy ain't here. My brothers and sisters ain't here. Daddy
Yeah.
ain't here. Cousins ain't here. Nobody's here. I could call them on the phone. I could write to them. I could ask them for help every once in a while. But I am going to be out here.
Uh-huh.
And so that made me into this. It made me a lot stronger, like a sink or swim type of person. Like everything was bootstrapped. If I wanted something, I figured out how to do it and I made it happen.
Uh-huh.
That's how it was.
Okay.
You know?
Okay. All right. So now let's go back into the production of the movie. You said you got a member, then you started to work on the cast.
Yes.
You were getting the cast together. You
Yes.
already had the script, or
yeah? Okay, the script took years to do.
Okay.
The script along lines with my whole life. The whole time I'm going back to the script.
Okay.
And every time I rewrote the script several times. The original script was going to be called Eye of the Hurricane, and then later it changed. But a lot of the scripts, a lot of the script elements were still always there. Interesting enough, the main story I held back because I felt like some of the topic was taboo for us to talk about. So I wanted to get people to support me, so I didn't put it in the script yet. That's so
Uh-huh.
crazy. I
Okay.
know that sounds crazy, but I used to give them the script that did not have Dominican Republic, it did not have Spanish, it didn't have any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it just had these characters that kind of were like in this rocky relationship kind of love story. But the other elements were there, the slavery, that all of this was in there, Africa, all that was there, because I felt like that was palatable. But
Mm.
I felt like the stuff that I really wanted to put in, I had to wait till the last minute to put it in there
Okay.
because everybody was gonna look at me sideways
Yeah. Yeah.
when I was trying to get support.
Yeah. Got
Um,
you.
and so as I started like learning about some of the realities that were being happening in our community, I just took note and I said, I see that. I'm gonna put it in there. And then I went through a period when I met my wife and we got married and and she, told her I wanted to take some time to start fleshing out the script. And I would write this, I would sit in one room, she would be in a whole other room, and I would sit in this one room by myself all day writing the script. And then at the end of maybe 2 or 3 days, I would come out and I would give her the script, and then she would read it, and she would say, "Nah, this ain't getting it yet."
Uh-huh.
And I would be like, "Okay," and I would go back and I would write some more stuff, and then she would be like, "Oh, this is funny, this is good, this is bad, but it ain't ready yet." I
Uh-huh.
will go back, and it would just constantly. And I think I rewrote it several times in that period. I really went hard on it, but I still withheld some of the harder points that I wanted to make.
Okay.
And some of those things I did when I say the last minute, I did a rewrite right before we were going to get ready to shoot with the crew and the cast was already there.
Okay.
And I said, okay, guys, I made a rewrite to the script. Even David Escom, who was my partner, after that meeting, he took me to lunch, and he was like, "Ed, you cannot have a United States Virgin Islands senator killing somebody."
Yeah.
Uh, that was a discussion and a half. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
And
But that
I
was good
said,
though. That was like very
I
interesting. You know what
said,
I'm
but
saying?
David, we're making a movie. We're
Right.
not we're not making, you know what I'm saying? I'm not making a reality show. I'm making a movie. And somebody, stuff gotta happen in the movie. But like some of the behaviors, like a lot of people didn't want it was like we knew it was like realistic stuff, but like nobody wanted to say.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, no, this is what we doing. I'll see you tomorrow when we start shooting.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And some people were so on board. I think a lot of the crew cheered when we had like one little read through, and some of the crew was like, "Yeah." And then there was one point where we read the part where the shooting happens, and the whole room was quiet. I'm tickled because the amount of passion that everybody took on for the movie,
Mm-hmm.
that it made them feel a way to hear anything that went on in the movie, they felt a way about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I love that. And it wasn't about being pro or con, saying, you know what I mean? It's just that it was that moment I knew that everybody was really in. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like to the
Yeah.
point where you read a line in the script and everybody gasped. Like, what?
Mm.
Like they were all in.
Yeah.
Everybody had invested in the characters. So people had opinions. Everybody was like, he wouldn't do that, or she wouldn't do that, or why they do this. And all of that and that stuff excites me. So so that was a really, really interesting part of the situation. But the script was being made all along.
Okay.
I have to reveal that that script was my agenda in my life for such a long time. Like I was, like even though I was just living, like there were times when I was just living life, the script was always there,
Mhm.
always there.
Okay.
If I went out, if I was hanging out, went to the club or something like that, the script is there.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I was at work somewhere doing something totally different, script was right there in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody that every hand that I shook, every person that I met, script is in my head all the time. Mm-hmm.
Okay. 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 So then formulating the cast, when you get a cast, I mean, how you narrow down the leading guy, the leading girl, like how, you
Oh
know what I mean?
man, these are great stories. I want to thank you for this platform, because a lot of platform I don't have enough room to really flesh out some of these things. And I love all of these people so much, and I want you to know that how brilliant they are. And sometimes I don't have enough platform for that.
Yeah.
Um, but I'll start with Bramel.
Yes.
Bramel was Bramel, he reached out to me on Facebook one time just to say, "Hey, I heard you made this movie, Me and Mrs. Jones. I saw the movie and I love it. And if you're ever doing something, I would like to be a part of it." Right? And I thought, wow, okay, that's unusual. And so, and one day I ran into him at a McDonald's at the McDonald's in the country, and I was with my daughter, and she was young at the time, so she was a handful. Like like you know what they doing all kind of stuff, and I'm like, what you doing? And he said, "Hey, I'm that guy who reached out to you about the movie thing. How you doing?" And I say, "Hey, yeah. I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna do something soon. I'm gonna call you." He did
Yeah.
not believe me because my attention, I didn't give him eye contact. I just was like, yeah. But I fully knew who he was.
Right, right, right.
In my mind, I was like, I started picturing him in the movie. Um, and then, and so then time came and I called him and he was like, "Me? I don't know. I don't," he didn't know whether he could carry it, because he was like, "I was thinking that you would let me be an extra or something, not like be the leading guy."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But then he came and he gave it a try, and he was like, and then he saw who all was in the room with the cast, and he was like, he knew Digitac and all. He was like, "This gonna be something." And then let me tell you about Kamisha Victoria Counts. When I first came home and people learned about my film background, I was invited to do like judging for the carnival, uh the Queen show.
Mm-hmm.
And Kamisha was young then. She was in the Queen show, and that's when I first knew of her. And she was extremely talented, and she actually won. She won the contest. She became Carnival Queen that year,
Mm-hmm.
and powerful talent, like could sing, could do, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
She did everything, right? And she went away. She did different things. She went to Berkeley. She, to school and all of this, and then she came back home, and she had made some songs and stuff. And I
Right.
went to Alico, and I was like, "Man, I'm making this movie," and he's like, "Yeah." Alico always knew whatever I was working on. He was somebody that I was like a cohort with.
Yeah.
Like maybe people don't know this, but he's so entrepreneurial, and he's a very giving spirit. Alico is.
Right, right.
And he's real, like he's real. So sometimes I would go sit with Alico and J Rob, and we would be talking about what I'm doing and what they doing and all this. But
Right.
I would see Alico like at inspection lane, And I say, oh man, yeah, we working on the movie, but we don't have the lead. And this girl, she got to be awesome. She got to be a force,
Right.
and she got to be. And then he said, you know, K Vic, and I was like, I know who she is, but she ain't gonna work with me. And he was like, yeah, man, call her.
Yeah.
So got her on board, and I just believed that she could do anything. So even though she was a little younger and all that, I was like, I'm gonna give her the chance to show what she got,
Mm-hmm.
cause this is a person who she gonna take on the challenge. Like
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
gonna she gonna she's a force for real. You
Yes.
know,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
she would study the script. I mean, she wrote bios of her character. She sort of try to understand who the character is, even though it ain't nothing like her. You know what I
Right.
mean? And
Right.
like she
Right.
was younger, so like some of the stuff that I was asking her, the sensibilities, she hadn't really encountered yet in life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so some of it she was like, really? Okay. And then she would learn about it, and
Right.
and she gave so much of herself. And then we had Monet came on. She came on to do a commercial for me one day, and she seemed so down to earth,
Mm-hmm.
uh like down to earth best friend type person.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I was like, you want to be in this movie? And she's like, movie, okay.
Yeah.
And she was just in this little quick lottery commercial that I did. And then there was and then the main one of the main characters, Bianca, was such an important character.
Uh-huh.
Could not find, and she needed to be everything. She needed to be beautiful. She needed to have a certain quality that was, and I needed her to speak majority Spanish,
Right.
and right, couldn't find a Bianca to save our lives. So everybody kept telling me about this girl named Bianca, a woman named Bianca that worked on Main Street, and they like, you should meet her. She's great. And she actually, her name is Bianca too, and everybody's like, you gotta meet her. So we met her. We met Bianca. She actually was away. She travels all the time, and she was always out of town. So it's like, when we gonna meet? So she came to the audition and was like, wow, she's great. But I think she's more the Bianca's sister. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Even though
Yeah.
she was extremely talented, but I don't want you to believe that you're not great, because you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you, right? But there was something that I was like, there's something else, because see, Bianca Bianca carried a Spanish accent, but she didn't have the accent as if she didn't know English.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I went to at this time we're putting the cast together. I went to see folks at TV2, and Junebug was there. And Junebug said, he's like, hey man, you making this movie and you ain't got me in your crew yet? What's the problem? I'm like, well, ain't got no money. Well, he's like, well, too bad I can't work for no money. So, but I told him, okay, we're looking for this Bianca person. We're looking for a character. And he says, I told him what the character was, and he says, I know who you need. I'm taking you to her right now.
Mm-hmm.
So he took me to meet Sly. Sly, the minute we saw, we're like, that's her. That's her. That's her. And she didn't speak English.
Yeah.
And so, but I said, but that's what I want. I want her to not speak English. I know a little Spanish, maybe blah, blah, blah. Everybody there, yeah, but your Spanish ain't all that. So we asked to meet with her, and she came with somebody to translate for her.
Yeah.
And she came with this lady named Maggie. Maggie Marguerite Augustine. Maggie was a real force, because Maggie came to this meeting with the whole cast now. I mean, with the whole crew. and she brings Sulai. And Maggie is talking for Sulai because Sulai don't speak English. But
Yeah.
Maggie's attitude was so off the chain.
Uh-huh.
She was like, how come I'm not in this movie? I was like, oh my God. So so now we bought into the Bianca, we bought into Sulai,
Yeah.
and now Maggie, I'm like, oh, you belong in this movie big time. So I went home and I wrote a role in there for Maggie. I rewrote the script a whole other time for Maggie to be in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Maggie was more than a cast member. She was there. Well, a lot of them were more than that because they showed up when they didn't even have to be there. But I put her on, and now we had most of the cast. Julian Ba was also somebody. He was one of those people that I worked with him, and Julian is so charismatic. I worked with he did so many commercials. Everybody, but you would hear him on the TV all day, every day on TV too. He voiced over every commercial, acted out crazy on commercials. Julian didn't even care how silly he looked or how smart.
Yeah.
He didn't
Yeah.
care about none of that. He was a performer,
Right.
and he had a lot. And I had the pleasure of working on some ads with him, and we were like peas and carrots. We got along so well. So when it was time, I said, Julian, I want to do this. Of course, it was like, you gonna pay? And I was like, nah, but you know.
Yeah.
And but Julian was so awesome that he gave us his time anyway. And his charisma was always Julian can do it. He's one of the people can do anything, you know. And so we had our full cast, and then we had Americo. America was like the henchman for Maggie, who was like the madam for the house, and he came through Bianca, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Bianca also gave a lot of support, and I was really afraid of the Spanish portion of the movie because of my limited use of the language.
Mm-hmm.
So we took a couple days where I hung out with Sulai, Maggie, and Bianca. I went with them location scouting for the ranch, at the ranch.
Uh-huh.
And we hung out for several days where we just talked about life. We talked about the movie, what we want to get out of it. And I fumbled with my Spanish, and we became good friends. And this is before shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And that made it really easy when it came to do the Spanish scenes, because we had talked about the scenes. We had went over what we want to get with the scenes. And they came in there, and those were the first scenes that we shot. And those were not only fun, but they were so good.
Mm-hmm.
Like we didn't hardly have to retake. Sometimes we retook just because they were good and we wanted to see it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they just were so smooth with it. They had never acted before, but they understood the story. They witnessed that this stuff is real,
Mm-hmm.
and they knocked it out.
Yeah. So like you had a, I mean, it was them that you use as far as the gauge to make sure that the Spanish portion was also authentic too. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. They knew what I wanted to say, and they went with it. And they like, this is, and Maggie was such a, she had been around and she saw stuff happen in our community in regards to them, and she knew stuff, and she would tell us when it wasn't right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But we had a lot of those discussions beforehand. So by the time it was time to actually do it, it was just a matter of going through the motions.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And Maggie would cook for us sometimes, and those were the best days. Salmon balls, and oh God. Yeah.
So you had any was there any, like, even with them, like as you're speaking with them, or to yourself, the concern that that community will feel like a little offended by
Yeah, I felt that, but I felt like anybody could be offended, because even our community could be offended. You know what I mean?
uh,
Anybody could be offended, but I was telling truth.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
telling stuff that happens, and the victims are those women who are trafficked,
Right.
because that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, there's a concern, but my duty as a storyteller in the world, like, I have to tell something that's gonna affect you. I gotta ruffle some feathers
Yeah.
somewhere.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Or else I'm not doing it right.
Okay.
Because the real reality is that these things are happening.
Mm.
And it's not a slight on that community. It's really to bring attention to both communities and say, this is a concern,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, people are trafficked.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember one time I was actually doing a human trafficking commercial, and somebody said to me, "You think trafficking happens in the Virgin Islands?" I almost laughed. I
Yeah.
was like, "Are you serious? Because it's happening in your face."
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have to do something about stuff like that. Um, and it's a complicated issue. It's more complicated than what we're able to show in Timeless.
Right.
It's
Right.
heavy, it's heavier. Um, but at the end of the day, people are affected by our behaviors. There are certain things that we've come to be okay with, and that are normal in our world, that we accept. And sometimes that those things become blinders to when we're not being good to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And as a creator, as somebody who's creating art of any form, it's our duty to bring it to light so that you can reflect, and bring it to light in a way that you could say, let me see, am I doing this?
Yeah.
Am I
Yeah.
doing this? Is this wrong? Is this right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was always a thing. And that's why I held it back, because I felt like I wasn't ready to argue with everybody every day about, should I do this movie or not.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
My goal was like, if I'm gonna do this, I gotta do it regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So after pulling like how would you say this was versus Me and Mrs. Jones, as far as like the process? Was it a little easier? Was it a little, you know what I mean? What would you say?
Well, okay. Filmmaking is always hard, but that's what makes it fun, is that it's not easy, right? Makes you feel like you're doing something in life. But it's just playing make believe for cameras. I mean, like, that's at the end of the day, that's what it is.
Ah,
But with Me and Mrs. Jones, I had little experience,
mhm.
and the people around me were more professional, and they were telling me no at most every turn. And Me and Mrs. Jones, I wasn't able to get stuff that I wanted to get. Because everybody, no, you can't do that, because we don't have enough for that, or we can't do this, we can't put the camera here. So, like, some of the dynamics, I was
Okay.
always disappointed with what I ended up with, because I couldn't. Everybody was telling me no,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, with Timeless, because most people didn't have experience in production or in movie production, they couldn't tell me it can't be done. They just had to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that allowed me a lot more flexibility. Now, the limitation was that we had no money. Like Mr. Jones, we had little money. Timeless, we had no money. So we had doors closed on us, a lot more. There was more passion in Timeless. And Timeless was something that was, because it was whole, I fully understood the ramifications of making a movie that's for us and that's by us in the Virgin Islands at the time when we made it. I fully understood what that could mean for us. So there was a lot more passion in there, in terms of what we felt. You know, we had so many obstacles. It took us 3 years to do it. It should have taken us 30 days. But we had the first carnival we wanted to shoot. Something happened at Juve. The Juve ended before we could get the shots, so we had to wait till the next year. Then that year, something else happened, and it didn't get the shots. So, we got some shots, but we didn't get enough. So we had to wait till the next year. And then, so it took us 3 carnivals to get through. And then, because I wasn't paying anybody, people had their jobs, and I had to do things, and stuff would come up in between. That everything took priority to Timeless. Timeless was the last thing on people's list to do, because there's no money. I can't afford anybody. I can't afford to pay attention. Yeah, ever that phrase? That was real. I can't afford to pay attention because you ain't got no money. And I have no ears for you. I have no eyes for you. We were turned down a lot. We tried fundraising. We couldn't get much, but people gave us what they could. You know, we were disappointed a lot sometimes because they were people in situations that we thought we could maybe capitalize on, that we ended up falling on our face. People would close the door and say, "Oh yeah, I know I told you that, but nah, I can't help you." So we had a lot of that, but like I said, with you got to have grace for that, because people don't see you when they don't know, they don't get what you're doing. So you got to just keep going.
Yeah, I see. I saw, and this was through Chantel Hobbit.
Yes, Hoheb. Yeah.
Hoheb. My bad. Hoheb, right? I think at the time she was doing some stuff on Facebook, and that's how I actually get to learn about the shoots, and you know what I'm saying. So you got to big her up too. You know what I mean?
Let me tell you about that. Okay, so we get started. We're getting started on the movie, and it was David and I were big on technology. We're like, look, we got all this technology. We need to use it to the fullest. I became aware that filmmakers were in a transition space where there was an old paradigm for filmmaking and a new. And most independent filmmakers waited until the movie was already made to start telling people, "Hey, the movie's ready. Here's my movie. Do you like it?" So I thought, this social media stuff, we should start promoting the movie while we're making it, because we come from a small place. It's going to take us a large mountain to move to get people to see us. So we need to start from now.
Right.
So I was like, but I wasn't proficient in social media. So we had one of those meetings in our in the little theater, and I told we discussed this with the crew, and I think it was Bramel who said, "Do you know Chantel Hoheb?" And everybody started murmuring, "Yeah." Everybody's like, they know her. And I had met Chantel before. She worked at tourism, but I didn't realize what she was doing with social media. And they said, she's awesome at it. And so I said, set us up for a meeting. So they set up a meeting for us, and Chantel showed up when we went to our second location, which was the grandmother's house location.
Yeah.
Chantel came early that morning, and she got such positive, cool energy. She came and she's like, "Yeah, yeah, I'll do this," and she listened to me tell her about what we're trying to do. Said, "Okay, great." She left before the meeting got started. She said, "Let me get out the way, but yeah, I'll do this." After shooting that day, Chantel had already had several things posted.
Yeah.
And she's like more than an influencer.
Right.
She's actually like a social media engineer.
Mhm.
She knows how to connect people and things, and she's like, "Oh, I know you'd be interested in this, so here." And she started doing that, and people started learning about the production, and it was important for us because we knew we wanted to be all over the islands,
Right.
so we needed locations, we needed little resources. So we figured if we build up, if everybody knows about us,
Mhm.
then when we come knocking, you're more likely to say yes.
Right. Right. Right.
And then we could also build a fan base early on, so that when we're ready to release, that we're not starting from scratch.
Got you.
And so Chantel, she was so much. She meant so much to all of us, because she was getting information from all of us. We would send her pictures while on set. We had photographers. We had Shalane Barry Wade. She was always there taking pictures. So we always had professionally done photos that
Right.
we could post and get people, let people get a peek into what we're doing. I want to also mention Africa Southwell, and also he helped us with our set decorating. Africa is, if you don't know him,
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, yeah. So we gonna finish up
yeah.
another word from
Mm.
our sponsors real quick, and we're gonna get back.
Okay then.
Bigging up our sponsors, Beast Printing, for all your printing needs. T-shirts, cups, tablecloth. Yeah, tablecloth. Chemo, private backhoe service. Excavation, need some yard cleaning? Call Chemo, private backhoe service. Outdoor Island Cinema, for your virtual outdoor entertainment. They also have bounce houses. K Services and Blessed Love Music.
Yeah, yeah. What you say?
This has been huge because thank you for allowing me to. It's so many people. I was telling you, this story of how we made it is so epic that
Uh-huh.
we had so many people that it's like I gotta mention, I gotta tell you who they are and
Yeah.
how they were and all of that, because that's what this is really all about. It's about the peopleness of what we did. Um, you know, there's people that I don't want to forget, and Richard Sturdivant, who was one of the other cinematographers that we worked with. He was another major piece. I worked with him several times. Leading up to that, he was the original person who would be shooting most things, and then when we got with Digitac, that expanded. Um, and then um, and then um, we had Miss Jacobs, who was the aunt who played the aunt, and
Yeah.
then there was the grandmother. Um, you know, like they came on. The aunt and the grandmother came together. Elaine Jacob, who came on first, I knew of her being like a storyteller
Yeah.
type, and she was an educator, and I thought she would be awesome for it. And then we told her we needed a grandmother, and and so um and so she brought her on, and they instantly became like our aunt and grandmother on set.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh and uh and we we really I'm sorry. I just have I'm thinking about folks that we had that we worked with, and we lost some people over the years. Wadably was a big part of it.
Yes,
Wadably
yes,
passed away.
yeah.
David, who was my part, David Edgecombe passed away as well.
Okay,
Bolo Feliciano. Bolo was another cohort of ours,
okay,
and
okay.
Bolo made a lot of classic Virgin Islands songs over the
Mhm.
years.
Right.
He's a backbone for a lot of bands and all that the sounds of the Virgin Islands. And he he made a lot of suggestions and gave music. And there's a lot of people along the way. And then we had people who were extras, you know.
Mhm.
Shout out to Simone, Celeste, Bima.
Mhm.
My wife brought on all her friends
Yeah,
to be extras and to make the scenes come alive. And they came and they supported and they gave up their time. And oh my God, it was an amazingly it was such a fun experience,
yeah.
and enriching as well. And so I want to bring you to St. Croix.
Okay.
St. Croix also played a huge role.
Before you do that, I think we are kind of cut off right at Africa, so I ain't sure if you was done with
Oh
saying your
yes,
thing about
yes. Okay,
Africa.
let me go back. I'll touch back with Africa. Africa was Africa. He's like a he's such a Zen master.
Yeah, yeah, yes, I know him.
You know, like he's unshakable. Like, but Africa, he was like a really good counsel for myself and David. You know,
Yeah,
and like a lot of different things that we were thinking about and stuff. We always talk about to him about it. And you know, he would share his opinions on stuff that we were thinking, and we would share what our plans are. And then he even took us around a lot when I was location scouting. And believe it or not, one of the big obstacles was getting a beach.
oh, really?
Because it's kind of, you know, you would think that in the Virgin Islands you should be able to find a beach. It wasn't about finding the beach; it was about getting permission to get to be on the beach, and that was difficult. But eventually, Mr. Brumont from the Magens Bay Authority, he helped us out a lot with Mr. Marone. He actually managed the Linguist Beach,
Okay,
and they allowed us to be on there, and that was a magnificent help. And
good.
then we had Chemo helped us to get the shanty that we wanted on the beach.
Yeah,
And that was a whole thing. We had to get a wrecker to bring the shanty to the beach to right on the edge. So then we had to go through all these trees to get there. And that was a challenge by itself.
yeah,
There's so many experiences.
right,
The
right, right.
carnival committee helping us to get, you know, giving us the ability to shoot during carnival. Carnival was a massive undertaking because we were like we're shooting in the middle of noise and craziness.
Uh-huh.
We had my Frankie Tong, who was a pilot friend of ours who was on our crew. But he was more on my crew before the movie, and he helped us to get a plane to fly over Juve. And then the following year, we got a helicopter to do the aerials for
Okay,
the movie.
okay.
And then we also had we had oh man, it's a lot. We had the
Yeah,
boats, so we did some stuff underwater. And then we had to go to St. Croix because the St.
yes.
Croix was going to be the pass. So let me tell you how that happened.
Okay,
We finished shooting. We finished shooting everything for the present day stuff, and we were exhausted. Time passed. I think it might have been either 6 months to a year, and my wife is like, "You got to finish this movie." You know what I mean? And
So I think it was like around Christmas time. We went to St. Croix to spend time, and I said, okay, at the end of that time that we spend, I'm gonna finish the movie. Now, mind you, when I went, I had nothing to finish the movie with, except the idea was that she would drop me off, and I would come back with a finish,
Yeah.
the finish. So casting that, we got Sean Georges, we got Kenya Eugene, and who is also a great talent.
Yes.
And we just had them when we and I went to St. Croix to spend the time, and we went to spend time with some friends of ours, Shakur Keith and Leslie and his wife Leslie, and they were very close friends of ours, and we're telling them about the movie. And Shakur had a guest house. He had little things going on in St. Croix, very well known, Frederickstead, everything. And Shakur and I were buddies.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you want to be a producer on this? He's like, what are you talking about? I don't know how to produce a movie, but I'll help you. I said, well, that's what producing is.
Yeah.
He's like, and so he's like, okay, so I'll give you a place to stay, and then I'll take you around to the places, and I'll help you to get the things where I could. And he did just that. Shakur helped pull together things. And then I had some friends, close family friends, Villette Clark, who was in St. Croix at the time. I got with her, and I actually grew up with her in New York. And she said that she would do the catering for us. So she got a truck, and she got all this food. And so everywhere we went, this truck followed us, and like we had stuff to eat, and we could keep going. Yeah. And then we had King Derby. Yes. King Derby came in. That's my good friend, King Derby. And he came in, and he brought together his little crew to sing to do the scratch music. Yeah. And I wanted it to be real scratch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there was a dance school that Shakur took us to, and they had the girls to do the dance, to do some dance for us. And they came, and then the old the Wim Museum, they allowed us to shoot on there so that we could have the plantation, the whole plantation look.
Yeah.
And then while we were there, I was like, oh, I forgot this whole role that needed to be filled. We needed to get the girl that he fell in love with.
Yeah.
And oh man, names are like just the names are just like getting stuck in my head. And Janisha John happened to be visiting home. I think she was we saw her on the TV, and I said, and Shakur was like, oh, I know Janisha. Maybe we could get Janisha on. Mm-hmm. And so Janisha came, and let me tell you, she was another fearless one. Both her and Kenya, I was asking them to run all over the place barefoot, and they did everything.
Yes.
Janisha was running in rocks.
Yeah.
Kenya was running in rocks, and they didn't even blink. And I would say, "You okay?" I would be so sorry. I would be like, "I'm sorry. Your feet hurt. You okay? We could do anything." Boom. And Kenya's husband Sam, he was there all the way, and they just really were real, not just troopers, but they were such a support, and they always came with their face smiling.
Yeah.
And they always came, even though it was hard as could be. There were some things that we wanted to do that we got shut down for, as we got there, and but we got what we could. There were folks who did the African stuff. Africa led a little team to build the huts, and then in Annalee, and Tawasi and Africa took off, and they were one crew. And then you had me and Royce and Junebug and James. We were staying in Shakur's place, and we were in Frederickstead, and so we had close access to Annalee, and we
Yeah.
would go to we would do some rainforest stuff, and we would be walking in the rocks and slipping and sliding. And every time we got frustrated, Junebug would come over there with a sandwich from Villette and say, "Ed, you want a sandwich?" and then we had Oliver White, who came all the way from St. Thomas to St. Croix to do drone footage for us. He was doing drone pilot stuff for us, and we were getting around in this little putt-putt car, and it was just hilarious. And I would look at Oliver and say, "One day this is going to be done, and you're going to be saying, 'I can't believe we finished this thing.'"
Yeah.
And but St. Croix was a real adventure as well. They became family as well. Everybody that touched us, we just became interchanged as family. It just was a massive outreach to so many people in our community who gave of themselves, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you actually shoot that the St. Croix scene, I mean the slave scene or whatever, that was actually to the end.
Yeah, we shot that last.
Okay.
Matter of fact, the very last stuff, it was like everything was exhausted, right? And we needed to get the shots of him being carted off to in the boat.
Yeah.
And it was the very last stuff, and I'm telling Royce, man, we had a little meeting with Royce and David, and they like, look, we could finish this, we could finish it. Just get everything together and let's do it one day. Yeah. So we got Kenya, we got Sean, and then we got a group of Haitian guys that were like on the street.
Yeah.
We pulled them off and we asked them if they wanted to do it. And David had a friend of his who knew to speak French to them. Yeah. And they explained to them the whole thing in French, and they came and they were willing, and they came, and then all we had was pizza to offer.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, fine, we having pizza and we doing this, right? And so I grabbed the camera. I was in the water. Royce brought a boat, and we did it. We had I had some shackles made out of what do you call it? PVC pipe.
Okay.
Art LaFranche. Art LaFranchise was like, he was like an art director, but he couldn't afford to work with me because I couldn't afford to work with him.
Yeah, right.
But it's like, all right, but I'll and so he sent his compadre to work with me, and they made some last minute shackles. And then we had little pieces to put in place, and I made sure the camera was tight. And we went down, shot it at Fortuna Bay, which no one goes to Fortuna Bay. And it was beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm not an avid swimmer, but I jumped in the water and I swam and I floated and I did it with the camera in my hand. And people used to say, "You're crazy. You got this camera. You don't even cover it or nothing." I'm like, I ain't got no cover. I'm shooting this. Let's go.
Yeah.
All of that, we just knocked it out. Yeah. By late that afternoon, we were done with the last footage. And I was so exhausted by then. And then I went into post. Mm-hmm. All along the time that we're doing it, every time we shot, I would be excited about the scene that we shot. And I would start putting it together. So when I went into post, it didn't take too much longer for me to really piece it together.
Okay.
But we had a lot of issues. Audio was rough. And, when you live in the Virgin Islands, sometimes you don't realize that the noises that are around. So we're like, if you shoot at night, you're gonna hear crickets.
Cricket, yeah.
So what I did was I incorporated that into the scenes. I just made sure crickets were in there. If
Yeah,
you try to take them out, you're not gonna have anything else.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's certain things that you had to like be you kind of like learn at the end, and these were steep hills sometimes for us to climb. Um, there were people who gave to us along the way, like of time and talents and energies, and helped us out. Sometimes we just had pizza to eat because that's what I could afford.
Mhm.
And then we had Derek Jones donate some money to us at one point. We ate well then.
Yeah,
Gave Maggie some money, and her and I went to Price Mart, and we
yeah,
we bought up all this food and made sure we had some good food. Uh, we had people, Wadably pulled together some people to do the carnival scene because we wanted to fill it up with more stuff that we didn't get during carnival because it was so hectic. And then we made sure we had food for them. And then we did some stuff at WTJX. We had quadrille dancers.
yeah,
Yeah. And and um and so when we put all that together, and then Miss Jacobs and Miss Laurel Samuel, who played the grandmother, we used to call her Granny on set, which she quickly became like a granny. She used to call me just to see how I'm doing. She would call to check on my family and that kind of stuff.
yeah.
And she passed away recently as well. But she was already a quadrille dancer. So she got her folks to come up there, and she was part of that quadrille group. And I wanted to make sure that we got as much, since this was like the first time a movie like this was made for and about the VI and all that kind of stuff, I wanted to make it chock full of stuff
Right,
that's
right,
VI.
right.
I
Yeah,
didn't want to leave stuff out. So in the movie, you're gonna find soca, you're gonna find calypso, you're gonna find quadrille, you're gonna find scratch, which I
yeah,
feel are two different things.
yes,
And you're gonna see all the people that we have, all the beauty of the different kinds of people we have in the Virgin Islands.
yeah,
And we all live as one people. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
And that's what I love about all of it. You know, um, I feel this is what the excitement is that everybody gets to be a part, and Virgin Islands get to see a little bit of themselves, a little glimpse. There's so much more story that we could tell. But like I said, I didn't know. You don't know when the next time you're gonna have this opportunity. So let's make sure we have
yeah,
quadrille dances. Make sure we have all of that. All of this has to be in there. And certain things like staples like the sugar mills
yeah, yeah.
and all of these things that are part of us.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, that's one thing I really appreciated about the project is how many different elements of the Virgin Islands were actually in there. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying?
Yes.
It was, and there's some others that they say has passed now. So all the people that were able to be in it and get that shot, like Wadabli especially too, for me, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like when I see him in the movie, we're like, oh man, I was so glad to, like, you know what I mean? See
Yeah.
him, and you know what I mean, knowing that he passed now and stuff like that. So it's like that was great, like the music, like you said, the food, like some food of featured, the locations, the clothing,
Mm-hmm.
like there were so
Mm-hmm.
many elements of the Virgin Islands that was there, especially like the accent and stuff like that. Because I was thinking, okay, we're gonna have some kind of, washout kind
Mm-hmm.
of vibe, you know what
No,
I'm saying? And it
it
was
would.
like,
It would. It would. With all the people that we had, that was not gonna happen.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you. I'll go back to Wadabli. He was one of my biggest supporters. Morale wise, because Wadabli don't allow you to sulk. I don't know. Wadabli, he don't allow you to feel weak. He
Yeah.
look at you like, what are you talking about, man? Like
Yeah.
every time, like I'm the kind of person where I'm just gonna be me. So if I get emotional or whatever, I'm not even tripping that somebody sees this,
Right.
because
Right.
I'm just a real person. And but what Dabley is the kind of person where he's like, bone up, let's do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's the kind of like, he will grab stuff and let's go. And Kamoy, his son Kamoy was always there. Kamoy, somebody, he's such a lovable kid.
Mm-hmm.
And Kamoy just treat everybody with respect and everything. And he had these desires to sing. And then you had the saxophone player. Oh my God. Sherman Williams.
Yeah.
Sherman Williams.
Yeah.
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 He played a little, but a lot of those songs we had to let go because some of them, we just didn't, they were covers, and then the music had to take another lift. And that's where Tony came in. When I finished the movie, I ran into Dwayne and in Charlotte, and Dwayne and I, we talked about him and back in Oakland, and
Yeah.
I told him about the movie, and then we talked about them performing in St. Thomas. So we brought them to the Virgin Islands. We brought them to St. Thomas. They performed at the Ryco,
Yeah.
and which was awesome. And then we went the next day. We went to see the movie at a film festival in St. John. And at that time, I had like these sort of like temporary tracks, so that it had a full flow.
Yeah.
But some of those music weren't ours, so we didn't use it. We couldn't
Right.
use it.
Right.
So
Right.
Dwayne saw the movie, and he was like, "Man." So I didn't even know how he felt about it. Like 2 weeks later, he calls me from South Africa, and he's like, "Man, you got that movie? We get ready to do this." And I was like, "What?" So he comes in. He's like, "Look, I'm gonna help you with that music issue you have. We're gonna come in and we're gonna help you with some of the sound issues you got, and we'll get this thing going."
Yeah.
And that's what helped us get to the level we are at now. But then in the middle of all of that, Hurricane Irma hit, and we were hugely affected, and I had to lay everything on the side so that we could survive. I could keep my family and I can continue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things happened, and we ended up having to leave before Maria came. And when Maria came, it flooded our home out,
Mm.
and the hospital was totally destroyed. And my oldest daughter, we really needed to be in a place where we had a stable hospital.
Right.
Let's just say that without getting
Okay.
into too much details.
Okay.
But that caused us to have to be stateside. And so with my life uprooted, I now had to like continue to carry on the banner of the movie, but my life was upside down. I didn't
Right.
have I had no work. I was now in North Carolina. We had to start our lives over. And, my daughter was like, I gotta get my education.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we had to put her in school, and we had to start all over. All the while the movie's sitting. This is sitting. Dwayne's trying to do what he wants to do. He needs to do for music. He's
Yeah.
getting all these people involved. Tower of Power. Oh my God, some people that are, it's just a pleasure that they're even on the soundtrack. And then and Dwayne is like, we've been so connected for so long, we're like brothers now.
Yeah.
But we just kind of, we were just taking it as we could, you know. And we had a screening in Atlanta. Russ Seals held for us, which was really awesome. All these things helped us to keep moving,
Right.
you know. We had some great screenings. All of that stuff led to the big premiere that we had in St. Thomas.
Yeah.
Which was magnificent. We had that red carpet thing. Everybody came dressed up to the max. We had limos. I had we had presidential limos. They gave us the service, but they treated us like kings and queens.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Right. And we showed up and we were like, it was a night that we'll never forget.
Yeah.
That was so big for us, you know.
Right,
and
right. So was that the first time like the crew and everybody see the whole project, or they seen it from before?
Yeah, most people only saw it that night.
Okay.
Some of them would come by the office while I was editing, and they would see scenes and stuff. People like Kamisha. Kamisha did not want to see too much because she was like, she didn't want to get it in her head like that.
Yeah.
And they were like saving it up. Oh man, I feel so much in my heart right now for just talking about this, because what an incredible time.
Yeah.
It was like the whole territory was talking about us. You know, we went from nothing. We didn't have nothing.
Bless, man.
And
you did it, man. You did it. You did it. You did it, man. Yeah.
I remember I was driving by Wendy's, which is across the street from La Borde Plaza, which was my father's building. And I heard something on the radio about the premiere. And somebody drove up next to me at the light. And they were like, "Hey man, you got some of them tickets in your car? Because they're sold out."
Yeah.
And that moment, I broke down in that moment, because the power that one person has to move things to this level is incredible.
Yeah.
You have an idea and you have the passion to drive it, and God takes you all this way. You know what I mean? And I thought to myself, it was just overwhelming to like see what you were able to do.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yes, there are bigger things. Yes, there are more things. But this was my first time dealing with something in that way, on such a grassroots. This couldn't be more grassroots. I mean, I would be breaking bread with my brother Ray Marone. When we started the company, it would be me and him trying to shoot commercials with this one camera, having butter bread and cheese in St. Croix, because they hire us to go over there, but we didn't have money to start out. So we eating and we break the bread like this. We cut it open like this. We buy the bread from the bakery. We slip the cheese in. We break it in two. Okay, this is what we eating. This is our food.
Yeah.
Ray didn't know nothing about shooting, but he learned about working that camera. He worked. He did anything he could. If I asked him to do lights, if I asked him, I tell him I need a ride. If I tell him, Ray is there.
Right. Yeah.
All of the people, the voice, the Junebug, everybody. Oh my God. And to expand your world. When you live in this life, a lot of times you meet a lot of close friends when you're a child, And then when you get older, you stop meeting friends.
Yeah.
A lot of times you get older and the people you meet become acquaintances more than friends. But I was fortunate enough to come into contact with people who I approached as acquaintances, and they became family.
Yeah.
And VI love was so strong. The VI love was, it was like, we talk about it, but like a lot of times we have like the hurricanes will come and then we see it where people help each other and stuff. But we were able to do it at a time where we didn't have, it was just a normal time.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
And we tapped into VI love on a level that it's just amazing.
No, bless, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Listen, this movie is cool. It has its shortcomings. It has its limitations. We know it. We know it
Right.
more than anybody else.
Uh-huh.
But what it has is a love and a passion that is just undeniable. And even you came to my office with some t-shirts.
Yes.
And you asked me if I had anybody that was willing to wear some shirts.
Yeah.
And I called Kamisha, she came over. You remember my little purple room?
Yes.
I had a little purple room.
Yeah.
I painted it purple in St. Thomas Cargo. They let me have the room. A lot of times I couldn't pay the rent. And they still let me stay there.
Yeah.
I couldn't pay, but they believed in us. Super Dave, who does the weather, he was the accountant. So he used to say, I'm gonna look the other way and just keep going, right? Don't worry, just keep working. Just keep working. And these were people that really behind the scenes that support that. Nobody even knows this happened.
Right.
You know, like there were things that we should have been done. We should have been falling apart. We should have never been able to finish. The only thing that we is able to finish is our spirit. We got up every day and we showed up. We showed up when we were counted out. We showed up when we weren't supposed to be there. We showed up when people told us no. And then when we got there were people there that say yes. There were people there who said, here's a piece of pizza. Here's here, have a sandwich. Here, you need extras, I'll be in the background. You know what I mean? Oh, what a awesome and lovely situation.
Yeah, man. Yeah, yeah, you know what I mean? Big up Natty Garments out that as a brand I bring.
That's right.
Yeah. And like I say, like it was the end product. You know what I mean? Once again, I proud of you and I let you know, like you said about the shark comers or whatever, but this is a VI production, you know what I mean? You did this grassroots, and to me, it's a win, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
A win.
Thank you.
And I got the people asking about part two. What happened next? What, you know what I mean?
Yes. So the future, I have a series version written.
Great.
That could happen.
Great.
And there's more stuff to come. There's more stuff to come, and I'm just waiting for God to have his way.
Okay. Okay, all right. Well, yeah, man. I mean, you know, we on our countdown again, so we can make this the closing one, you know what I mean? I could run it again, I could go, you know what I mean? But we could make this a close. Like I said, that people asking for a part two, like you said, the CV. So what's next for Ed? I mean, I ain't if you could sit down in about 2 minutes. But you know.
Well, I'm right now I produce videos for Habitat for Humanity, and which I love doing. And I have my eyes set on making some more stuff. I'm working with Oakland TV, Oakland Film and TV, and Dwayne Wiggins. We're seeing that we have a nice synergy working. We're gonna start building some projects up, and in different capacities, and we're gonna see what comes next. The Virgin Islands is always number one for me in my heart and my soul. Even when things are not in the Virgin Islands will be in the project. Because we're bigger than our mileage, and so that's really where it is. My family has been awesome. My wife has been incredible. My kids are I'm a girl dad, big time.
Yeah.
And they keep me grounded, they keep me happy. And that's where I'm at.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Like I say, bless, give thanks for the time, give thanks for, giving us a pleasure, and we gotta do it again for the next projects. We'll be looking out.
Well, thank you so much. And listen, I appreciate this. Like I said, I appreciate this platform so much. You allowed me to really express a lot of what I have. If I missed anybody or situations, I really apologize, but there's so much. And I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful for everyone. And I'm even just grateful to the Virgin Islands for existing, because it's a really beautiful and wonderful place.
All right, bless. You don't know.
Yes, and Department of Tourism for sure. Alany, I can't say enough.
Yes.
Blessing, 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 love, blessing, 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 love, blessing, 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 love, blessing.